Every empire has a secret. And every downfall starts with one silent crack. For years, Titan Corp was untouchable, a fortress of power built on innovation, ambition, and 1,000 whispered sacrifices. Employees came and went. Ideas were born, stolen, buried, and reborn again. It was the cost of survival. The cost of success. But one brilliant idea was never meant to be taken. And the woman behind it, quiet, overlooked, underestimated, was never meant to fight back. Yet on the night everything changed. And she began documenting every shadow, every lie, every knife they had ever turned in her direction. Because revenge, the real kind, doesn't start with anger. It starts with clarity. And by the time they realized what she was capable of, it was already too late. This is not just a story of betrayal. This is the story of how one quiet woman brought down an empire from the inside out. Before we jump into today's story, if you love intense family drama, shocking betrayals, and revenge served cold, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the notifications. Here on Family Feud Files, every story is personal. And every episode pulls you deeper into the truth behind the feud. Now let's step into the story. My name is Elena Carter, and for years, I believed in loyalty, hard work, and doing the right thing. I wasn't the type to chase titles or public recognition. I believed that if I poured my heart into my work, the results would speak for themselves. And for a long time, they did. At Vinatech Solutions, I wasn't just another employee, I was the pulse of the company. Every major innovation, every successful project, every feature that drew praise from clients had my fingerprints all over it. I wasn't seeking fame. I wanted progress. But loyalty, as I learned the hard way, isn't a shield against greed, envy, or betrayal. It started subtly. At first, it was the small things, hushed conversations that stopped when I entered the room, emails I was excluded from, and colleagues who suddenly forgot to include me in meetings. I thought maybe I was imagining it, but deep down, a knot of suspicion grew tighter every day. Then came Project Aura, a revolutionary digital security platform I had conceptualized, designed, and painstakingly developed over 2 years. It was my magnum opus. I had envisioned Aura as a system that could redefine how businesses protected sensitive data. It wasn't just about encryption. It was about intelligence, efficiency, and adaptability. I had spent countless nights debugging, rewriting, and perfecting it. Every feature had a purpose. Every line of code had my logic embedded. This was more than a project. It was a reflection of me. So, imagine my shock when Marcus Hale, my manager, someone I trusted, called me into his office and congratulated Claire, a junior employee who had barely joined the team, for leading the breakthrough on Aura. I froze. My throat tightened. Claire, the new hire? She barely knew the system, let alone its intricacies. And yet, in that polished corporate moment, she received the credit I had earned. The room clapped. Marcus smiled. And I realized, in that instant, what had been happening for months: I was being erased. 2 weeks later, HR called me in. The word restructuring hung in the air like a guillotine. My position had been terminated. They handed me a folder filled with fabricated evidence, claiming I had leaked confidential information. The moment was surreal. Years of loyalty, sleepless nights, and innovations reduced to allegations on paper. Marcus approached me afterward. His expression was carefully neutral. "I trusted you, Elena," he said. "You disappointed us all." I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "You'll regret this." He laughed. "I doubt it." But he would regret it, though not in the way he expected. I walked out of that office with a sense of finality. I didn't have a plan yet. All I had was a spark, a determination that had been buried under years of dedication, now ignited. I knew one thing: I wouldn't let them get away with erasing my work, my reputation, or my career. The first week after being fired was the hardest. I oscillated between anger and despair. I replayed meetings, remembered conversations, and cursed myself for trusting the wrong people. But slowly, the fog cleared. Grief turned into clarity. I realized that to fight back, I needed patience, evidence, and strategy. Not rage. Not public spectacle. But quiet, precise, unstoppable action. I started by gathering every piece of evidence I could find: drafts, prototypes, emails, and design notes. I had always kept meticulous records, more out of habit than foresight. Every whiteboard sketch, every time-stamped commit, every annotation became part of a mountain of proof that I could use to reclaim what was mine. Next, I reached out to former colleagues I trusted. Not everyone agreed to help. Some feared repercussions, others had been too complicit in the betrayal to speak. But a few brave engineers, who remembered the countless nights we had debugged code together, were willing to quietly corroborate my contributions. Their statements weren't loud or public. They were precise, factual, and legally defensible. Meanwhile, I began to assemble a team. I didn't need a large company. I needed people who were smart, discreet, and loyal to the principles of innovation and integrity. My former mentee, now a skilled UX designer, agreed to join. 2 former engineers, who had seen the truth but remained unrecognized, signed on. And I found a lawyer, Nadia, who specialized in intellectual property disputes and had a reputation for taking down powerful corporations. Together, we devised a plan: rebuild Aura, prove its origin, and expose the truth through evidence, legal channels, and the market itself. But everything had to be perfect. Any misstep could destroy me before I could even strike. Over the next month, we worked tirelessly. We rebuilt the system from scratch, incorporating improvements, optimizations, and refinements that only the original creator could conceive. We created detailed documentation, including dated commit logs, prototype files, and design sketches. Every piece was a fingerprint of my work. We also planned strategically. Public exposure had to be controlled. We reached out to investors discreetly, seeking funding under non-disclosure agreements. We prepared legal documentation, ensuring that every potential claim from Vinatech could be countered with indisputable proof. By the time the first investor demo was ready, the foundation was solid. We were ready to strike not with noise, but with undeniable fact. The fire of betrayal had been transformed into a weapon of precision, a tool to reclaim what was stolen and to rebuild stronger than before. And yet, I knew this was only the beginning. The real test would come when our product met the market, when the truth confronted the lies, and when I forced those who betrayed me to confront the consequences of their arrogance. I wasn't just planning revenge. I was planning justice. Quiet, deliberate, and irreversible justice. After the initial shock of being fired wore off, I realized something crucial: anger alone would not win this battle. Rage is loud, impulsive, and often self-destructive. I needed a plan that was patient, precise, and unstoppable. And the first step was assembling the right team. I couldn't do this alone. Vinatech had resources, lawyers, and employees who could bury me under bureaucracy. I needed people I could trust, who valued integrity, competence, and discretion over politics or quick personal gain. First, I reached out to Marcus Lee, one of the senior engineers I had mentored. Marcus had been quietly brilliant, a guy who could solve problems no one else understood. He was wary at first. "Elena," he said, "if we get involved in this, we're risking careers, lawsuits, and more." "I know," I said, "but this isn't about revenge for revenge's sake. This is about reclaiming what is mine, legally, ethically, and without burning bridges we don't need to." He thought for a long time, staring at the ceiling. Then finally, he nodded. "Okay. But we do it smart. We don't leave a single paper trail that could be used against us." Next, I reached out to Sofia Ramirez, a UX designer who had worked under me for nearly 3 years. I had always admired her precision and creativity. She didn't hesitate. "If this is about fairness and proof, count me in," she said. Her loyalty was a rare gem, a spark of integrity in a sea of opportunism. Then came the legal angle. I contacted Nadia Patel, a formidable lawyer specializing in intellectual property disputes. Nadia had a reputation for dismantling corporate giants through meticulous documentation and strategy, rather than public spectacle. I needed her guidance. When we met in a quiet cafe, Nadia didn't mince words. "You're up against people with money, influence, and PR machines," she said, tapping her pen against her notebook. "But evidence is your weapon. Solid, undeniable evidence. Documentation, timestamps, corroborated testimony. That's how you win without resorting to theatrics." I nodded. I had anticipated as much, and in truth, this was my comfort zone: logic, facts, strategy. The team assembled. I laid out the first phase of the plan: rebuild Aura in a controlled environment. Our goal wasn't merely to replicate the project. It was to create a polished, verifiable version that could prove my authorship and highlight my unique innovations. We needed to strengthen the parts that had been stolen, refine the user experience, and document every detail meticulously. Our workspace was modest, a small co-working office with enough desks, monitors, and whiteboards for 3 teams. It was cramped but perfect for stealth operations. I divided responsibilities. Marcus focused on back-end architecture and encryption logic. Sophia refined the interface and user experience. And I supervised overall strategy, integration, and documentation. We worked in sprints, often late into the night. Sleeplessness became routine. There was a rhythm to it: code, test, document, repeat. I annotated every line, added timestamps, and preserved drafts to show the development journey. Every prototype, no matter how crude, was saved and archived. These weren't just steps toward a product. They were legal proof, carefully constructed and verifiable. At the same time, we began reaching out to former colleagues who could corroborate my contributions. It was delicate work. Many were afraid of retaliation. Some were complicit in the corporate politics that had betrayed me. But a few agreed to provide factual statements. Elena conceptualized the encryption module. She resolved the critical architecture flaw. Her prototypes predated Claire's involvement by months. These statements, while discreet, would later prove invaluable. They were not emotional pleas. They were factual anchors, difficult to dispute, and carefully documented with dates, names, and context. Meanwhile, Nadia advised us to prepare for every possible legal counterattack. She emphasized documentation, screenshots, version histories, and emails were all cross-checked for authenticity. We had to anticipate the corporate machine, the lawyers, the PR teams, the spinning narratives, and counter them before they could act. We also focused on funding. We needed capital to build a polished prototype and prepare for market demonstration. I contacted discreet angel investors I trusted, presenting our plan under strict NDAs. Our pitch was simple: a team of proven innovators, a revolutionary product, and a precise timeline for demonstration. No drama, no revenge rhetoric, just facts and potential. The market is crowded, investors would say. Going against an established company is too risky. Each rejection stung. But it also sharpened our strategy. We revised our pitch, emphasizing verifiable milestones, documented evidence, and a risk-mitigated approach. By the third meeting, we found a partner who understood substance over spectacle. He reviewed our documentation, traced the timeline of my work, and recognized the originality and depth of Aura. His support brought legitimacy, funding, and a morale boost to our small, determined team. As development progressed, I began introducing subtle enhancements. These were features that only someone intimately familiar with the original design could conceive. Encryption methods to prevent insider tampering, user flows that reduced error rates, and adaptive learning algorithms that anticipated security threats. These weren't flashy gimmicks. They were silent signatures, subtle proof of authorship. In parallel, we began preparing for controlled exposure. We weren't going public yet. Our strategy involved building credibility, not noise. The goal was to create a product that could speak for itself, elegant, functional, and verifiable. We anticipated that Vinatech would attempt to claim our work as theirs. So every file, email, and prototype was meticulously archived to prove origin. The work was exhausting, but the team's loyalty and competence kept momentum high. We shared late-night victories, solving critical bugs, perfecting features, and receiving positive feedback from discrete trial users. The tension was high, but so was the satisfaction of seeing progress in something that had been stolen from me. Despite the long hours, I made time for reflection. I journaled daily, documenting both technical progress and emotional resilience. I wrote down lessons learned from betrayal, strategies for maintaining focus, and reminders of the ultimate goal: justice, not vengeance. These reflections became a mental map, keeping me centered and preventing impulsive reactions. We also had moments of levity. Marcus would jokingly comment on the absurdity of corporate politics. Sophia would sneak snacks into the office at midnight, insisting fuel is critical for genius. Even Nadia, who maintained a serious exterior, shared quiet smiles when we discovered evidence that contradicted Vinatech's claims. These moments reminded us that even in high-stakes battles, human connection and humor were essential. Weeks turned into months. Each milestone brought us closer to our ultimate goal. We had rebuilt Aura, documented its creation, and secured legal and financial support. The foundation for controlled exposure, strategic market entry, and undeniable authorship was complete. Yet, the most critical phase was still ahead: confronting the corporate giant quietly, methodically, and effectively. Our plan wasn't to destroy Marcus or Claire publicly. It was to reclaim what had been stolen and demonstrate, with precision, that the truth cannot be hidden. As I stood in the office one evening, looking at the progress on the large whiteboard flowcharts, timelines, and strategic notes, I felt a sense of power I had never experienced before. This was not just a battle of revenge. It was a test of strategy, resilience, and integrity. I whispered to myself, they think they erased me. They think this is over. They don't know the storm they've just provoked. And with that, the quiet construction of my empire. By the time we were ready to introduce Aura to the outside world, the months of relentless work had transformed our small, quiet team into a finely tuned operation. Every line of code, every prototype, every piece of documentation had been carefully preserved and time-stamped. We were no longer just reacting to betrayal. We were creating a force that could not be ignored. The first step was controlled exposure. I didn't want a public explosion that would have risked backlash or legal complications. Our goal was precise: present Aura to investors, industry insiders, and discreet journalists who valued substance over spectacle. The morning of the first demo, I woke up earlier than usual, nerves running through me like electric currents. The team had been working through the night, ensuring every module was flawless. Marcus reviewed the encryption layers one last time, muttering to himself in his typical meticulous style. Sophia ran through the user interface flow, clicking through screens to ensure every transition was seamless. Even Nadia, usually calm and composed, had a trace of excitement in her eyes, a rare break in her professional armor. When the investors arrived, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. I greeted them with a calm smile. "Thank you for taking the time to review Aura," I said. "What you're about to see is the culmination of years of innovation and meticulous design." The demo began. I guided them through the system step by step. Unlike Vinatech's flashy but superficial presentations, Aura's elegance lay in its quiet efficiency. Encryption layers adapted intelligently. The interface anticipated user behavior. The system self-corrected errors in real time, preventing potential breaches before they occurred. Every feature was backed by timestamps, detailed logs, and documented iterations proving my authorship. One investor leaned forward, eyebrows raised. This isn't just a security platform. It's predictive, adaptive. And your documentation? It's airtight. How did you ensure the lineage of all these changes? I smiled, answering with care. Every step of development has been documented, verified, and timestamped. We've maintained a rigorous chain of custody for all prototypes, code commits, and design files. After the demo, the investors were visibly impressed. They asked questions, challenged assumptions, and I answered each with calm precision. There was no arrogance, only confidence grounded in fact. When they left, Marcus let out a quiet breath. "They're impressed," he said. "No hype, just facts. They can't argue with this." Next came the legal groundwork. Nadia filed preliminary claims ensuring that any attempt by Vinatech to misappropriate or falsely claim credit could be countered with our meticulously prepared evidence. Every file, every email, every statement from corroborating colleagues became part of a legally defensible record. Meanwhile, we began discreetly leaking small snippets of Aura to tech journalists known for their investigative work. These weren't sensationalized leaks. They were factual, precise, and verifiable. Screenshots with timestamps, whiteboard sketches with dates, and anonymized user flow diagrams enough to show innovation and originality, without giving away the full system. Within days, murmurs started circulating in the tech community. "There's a new player in digital security. Some former Vinatech employees involved. The system shows unique architecture that predates Claire's claimed work." The public wasn't yet aware, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. Then came the first direct pressure on Marcus and the Vinatech board. Investors who had received preliminary briefings from our demo began asking questions. Emails, casual inquiries, and private calls highlighted inconsistencies in Vinatech's claims about Aura. "Can you verify the timeline of development? Who was responsible for this module?" We noticed version control discrepancies. Inside Vinatech, tension grew. Marcus's carefully maintained composure began to crack. Meetings became defensive, HR memos were circulated hurriedly, and employees whispered behind closed doors. They had underestimated one critical fact: truth, once backed by evidence, is remarkably resilient. The first public acknowledgement came when a well-known tech journalist published a subtle piece titled, "The article didn't sensationalize. It simply compared timelines, code commits, and prototypes, highlighting anomalies in Vinatech's claims." Claire's name was mentioned only in passing, while the facts pointed clearly toward the original creators. The team I had assembled. Marcus called me that evening. I didn't answer. He left a message, polite but strained. "Elena, can we talk? We need clarity on these developments." I listened, heart steady. There was no need for a personal confrontation yet. The storm was unfolding on its own. I had built a system that spoke for me. A network of verifiable evidence and loyal collaborators. Marcus could call, plead, or threaten, none of it would change the facts. Over the next 2 weeks, pressure mounted. Investors questioned contracts. Partners requested proofs of origin. Internal memos at Vinatech revealed panic as employees began to doubt the leadership narrative. Emails leaked anonymously, highlighting internal debates over timelines and credit for Aura. At this point, I realized an important lesson: you don't need to attack directly to cause collapse. Precision and patience do the work for you. Each carefully planned release, each discreetly shared document, each verified testimony acted like a domino, toppling the structure of arrogance and deception without confrontation. Meanwhile, Aura's development continued. We refined features, added enhancements, and prepared for larger investor demonstrations. The system was now more secure, intuitive, and efficient than ever. Every success reinforced the message: the original creators, those erased, those dismissed, could create brilliance quietly, without theatrics. During this period, I also focused on team morale. Late nights, constant pressure, and the weight of strategic planning could have easily demoralized a small group. Instead, we celebrated small victories: a critical bug resolved, a positive feedback email from a discreet trial user, a new investor interested. Each victory, no matter how minor, reminded us that progress was inevitable when grounded in integrity, diligence, and collaboration. One evening, Marcus emailed directly. "Elena, this isn't over. You can't just take what was created under my management and claim it. Let's discuss this before it escalates further." I forwarded the email to Nadia with a simple note: documented. Filed. No reply needed. I didn't need to argue. Facts, evidence, and timing were now my allies. Marcus's words had no power against the mountain of proof we had built. The first strike had been delivered, silently, methodically, irreversibly. By the end of the month, whispers in the industry turned into questions in boardrooms. Contracts at Vinatech were delayed. Investors demanded clarification. Employees inside the company began to question leadership decisions. Claire's name, once highlighted for credit, became associated with confusion and misattribution. And through it all, our team moved forward, calm and precise. No one shouted. No one exaggerated. No one sought public drama. The work itself, documented and undeniable, became the weapon. I remember sitting alone late one night, looking at the city lights through the office window. I felt a quiet sense of vindication. The fire of betrayal had been transformed into a disciplined, unstoppable force. The first strike was complete, but the battle was far from over. What I realized most clearly in that moment was this: revenge is loud. Justice, when executed with precision and patience, is silent but devastating. And in this quiet strike, the foundations of Vinatech's arrogance were already beginning to crack. By the time the second wave of exposure hit, the cracks at Vinatech were impossible to ignore. The first strike, our discreet demo, the timestamped documents, the corroborated testimonies had sown seeds of doubt among investors, partners, and employees. Now, those seeds were growing into a storm. It started quietly. Internal emails leaked, not by us but by employees desperate for clarity, revealing inconsistencies in Vinatech's claims about the development timeline of Aura. Who actually coded the adaptive encryption module? One email asked. Another highlighted that certain design documents predated Claire's involvement by months. The leaks were factual, precise, and impossible to dismiss without verification. Marcus tried to maintain control. He called emergency board meetings, drafted press releases, and attempted to reassure investors. But every move was reactive. Every statement he made, every memo circulated, only highlighted the inconsistencies further. Leadership, which had once seemed invincible, was now scrambling to survive. Inside Vinatech, panic became palpable. Employees whispered in hallways, questioning authority, loyalty, and their own role in the unfolding mess. Those who had once supported Claire were now confused. Those who had ignored my warnings began to reconsider their choices. The company culture of arrogance was collapsing under the weight of indisputable evidence. Meanwhile, my team continued to work with quiet precision. We expanded our investor demos, incorporating improvements, and showcasing the refined version of Aura. Each demonstration not only impressed potential partners but also provided further proof of our authorship. The timestamps, version histories, and development logs made it clear the original work had always been ours. One morning, we received a confidential tip from an industry insider. Vinatech was internally debating whether to remove Marcus from leadership. Board members were worried about investor confidence and potential legal liabilities. It was a moment of validation. The pressure we had been building quietly was now forcing them to react. I allowed myself a brief smile. This was not public humiliation. This was precision. The corporate machine could not withstand methodical exposure backed by undeniable evidence. And I was controlling the tempo, ensuring each step was deliberate and measured. Then came the legal escalation. Nadia filed a preliminary case asserting intellectual property rights over Aura. The documents were Airtight, dated prototypes, emails, and corroborating statements from former colleagues made our claim indisputable. Vinatech's lawyers tried to counter, but the evidence was overwhelming. Each attempt to discredit us only strengthened our position. Within days, the news began trickling out in trade publications. Dispute over digital security platform highlights. Potential misattribution of key features at Vinatech. The articles were factual, devoid of drama, and focused on verified evidence. The public, investors, and partners all began asking the same question: if Vinatech didn't create Aura, who did? Claire, who had once basked in undeserved recognition, suddenly found herself at the center of scrutiny. Her claims about leading the project were being challenged internally and externally. Colleagues who had supported her either went silent or quietly corroborated our version of events. The internal tension reached a breaking point during an emergency board meeting. Marcus was visibly shaken, his confident facade crumbling. "We need to act now," he insisted. "We can't afford to let these claims dominate the narrative." But the board, increasingly aware of the discrepancies, hesitated. Every action they considered was countered by documented evidence. Evidence we had painstakingly collected and preserved. At the same time, our market presence was growing. Aura began receiving inquiries from potential clients who were intrigued by the platform's capabilities and its verifiable origin. Each contract we secured was another nail in the coffin of Vinatech's credibility. Our quiet, precise strategy was now producing tangible results: recognition, credibility, and market influence. I remember sitting with Marcus Lee late one night, reviewing the latest system improvements. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted. "Elena," he said quietly, "I never imagined it would be this effective. You didn't just prove a point. You dismantled their narrative without even trying to fight publicly." I nodded. That was exactly the goal. The victory was not in spectacle. It was an undeniable truth. Every enhancement, every proof of authorship, every successful demo was a calculated move that forced Vinatech to confront its own failures. The pressure on Marcus and the board intensified. Investors began delaying contracts and requesting additional verification. Partners questioned the validity of agreements. Employees whispered doubts in every department. The empire that had once seemed untouchable was unraveling. Not because of a single dramatic act, but because of relentless, precise, and patient exposure. Meanwhile, our team celebrated quiet victories. Marcus and Sophia, who had been working tirelessly alongside me, found satisfaction not in public acclaim but in the knowledge that justice was being served methodically. We shared late-night dinners in the office, discussing improvements, strategy, and the subtle art of reclaiming what was rightfully ours. Nadia advised patience. "They will attempt to intimidate," she warned. "But don't respond impulsively. Let the evidence do the talking. Every step we take strengthens your position and weakens theirs." I followed her advice strictly. There were moments when I wanted to confront Marcus, Claire, or the board directly, but I resisted. The thrill of direct confrontation is temporary. The impact of carefully orchestrated strategy is lasting. I reminded myself daily, victory is in precision, not spectacle. By the third month, the ripple effects were undeniable. Vinatech's valuation began to decline subtly as investors questioned leadership competence. Contracts were delayed or renegotiated under pressure. Employees who had once supported questionable claims reconsidered their positions. Claire's credibility was eroding quietly but steadily. One evening, I reviewed the timeline of our actions. Every demo, every legal filing, every discrete leak had been planned, executed, and documented. The storm we had been building methodically was now visible not as chaos, but as undeniable disruption. The corporate machine that had betrayed me was faltering under the weight of its own misjudgments. I allowed myself a moment of reflection. I remembered the day I had been escorted out of Vinatech, the sense of betrayal and loss, and the spark that ignited within me. That spark had guided every decision, every strategy, and every action. It had transformed despair into focus, anger into precision, and betrayal into opportunity. The quiet collapse of Vinatech was not just professional vindication. It was personal. It proved that integrity, evidence, and patience could outmatch arrogance, deceit, and entitlement. The lessons of betrayal, meticulous planning, and unwavering determination were now manifesting in reality. And yet, the battle was far from over. This was only the beginning of public scrutiny, legal maneuvers, and market validation. While the empire was faltering, the ultimate victory would come when Aura dominated the market and the narrative, leaving Vinatech and its leadership quietly defeated. As I looked at the city skyline from our modest office, I felt a deep sense of calm. The quiet strategy, the patient execution, and the unwavering focus had created a force that could not be ignored. The collapse had begun methodically, irreversibly, and elegantly. The morning I realized the reckoning had truly begun, I didn't feel triumph. I felt focus. Months of meticulous planning, discreet exposure, and strategic execution had brought us to this point. But the real test was whether we could maintain the momentum and deliver the final blow without faltering. Vinatech was no longer untouchable. The quiet collapse we had engineered through controlled leaks, investor scrutiny, and corroborated evidence had begun to disrupt every facet of their operations. Contracts were delayed. Clients demanded clarity. Investors questioned leadership competence. The boardroom, once a place of confident, polished authority, had turned into a room filled with tension, whispers, and doubt. Marcus had stopped calling. Claire didn't respond to emails. Their silence was confirmation they knew the storm was real, and they were powerless to control it. Meanwhile, our team at Aegis Tech worked like a well-oiled machine. Every day brought measurable progress. We released updates, enhanced functionality, and strengthened security protocols. Every improvement wasn't just a technical achievement. It was a message. The original creators of Aura were not only back, but they were better than ever. I remember sitting at my desk late one evening, reviewing the latest analytics from our discrete pilot clients. Adoption rates were soaring. Every system improvement had a measurable impact: fewer errors, faster response times, stronger security measures. Our work was not only vindicating us, it was setting the standard that Vinatech had failed to achieve. Nadia's legal updates arrived via encrypted email. Each one was a reminder that our documentation, timelines, and corroborating statements had successfully resisted every challenge. She was meticulous, ensuring that every step we had taken was airtight. Her confidence was reassuring. The law was on our side. One particularly satisfying moment came when an industry watchdog reached out to verify claims about Aura's development timeline. We provided the meticulously prepared documentation. Their review confirmed what we already knew: the innovation, the timelines, and the execution all pointed unequivocally to me and my team. Vinatech's previous claims were undermined quietly but decisively. Internally, Aegis Tech thrived. Marcus Lee and Sofia Ramirez, the backbone of the technical team, were more motivated than ever. We shared late-night strategy sessions, laughter over small successes, and quiet celebrations of milestones that weren't yet visible to the public. The camaraderie and loyalty within our small team contrasted sharply with the fractured environment at Vinatech. And then the emails started. Investors, previously committed to Vinatech, began seeking meetings with us. They didn't make threats. They didn't demand concessions. They asked questions about Aura, timelines, and potential partnership opportunities. Each inquiry was a silent acknowledgement of our legitimacy, a subtle victory in a battle waged quietly but decisively. The internal turmoil at Vinatech escalated. Employees whispered about leadership incompetence, delayed product launches, and questionable decisions. Claire's credibility was in tatters. Marcus, once confident and commanding, appeared frantic in board meetings. The pressure, which we had engineered through careful planning and patient execution, was now at its peak. I remember receiving a message from one of our discrete industry contacts. Vinatech's board is in crisis mode. Investors are asking for immediate clarifications. They know they can't ignore the evidence. I smiled quietly. This was the moment our months of preparation had been leading to. The reckoning was not a loud spectacle. It was not a public confrontation. It was a quiet, methodical dismantling of arrogance, entitlement, and deceit. At Aegis Tech, we intensified our efforts. Every new feature was documented, every prototype archived, every update tested. We were building not only a product but an unassailable narrative of originality and competence. Our work was no longer defensive. It was assertive. Each release reinforced our authority and further destabilized Vinatech. Then came the first direct acknowledgement. A major client, previously aligned with Vinatech, reached out to negotiate a contract with us. Their email was careful, professional, but unmistakable in its message. They recognized the superiority of Aura and the credibility of the team behind it. I forwarded the email to Nadia. Her response was simple but effective. This is leverage. Prepare to capitalize on it without overplaying your hand. And we did. Every negotiation, every investor meeting, every client interaction was executed with precision. We didn't need to disparage Vinatech. The truth, backed by evidence and consistent results, spoke for itself. Marcus and Claire could protest, threaten, or spin narratives, but no argument could withstand the documentation, client feedback, and demonstrable superiority of our work. The corporate collapse was subtle but undeniable. Vinateka's board issued internal memos trying to reassure staff, but these were met with skepticism. The employees, aware of discrepancies and empowered by leaks, questioned every claim. Contracts stalled. Investors demanded meetings and clarifications. Public perception, though not yet in mainstream media, had shifted. And amidst it all, Aegis Tech flourished. We were quiet, controlled, and consistent. The contrast could not have been clearer: a team grounded in integrity, evidence, and precision versus a company crumbling under its own arrogance and mismanagement. One afternoon, Marcus attempted to contact me directly. He asked for a meeting, claiming he wanted to resolve matters amicably. I forwarded the message to Nadia. Her advice was cautious. Do not meet alone. Do not respond impulsively. Everything must remain documented. Let them make the first move legally and strategically. You are in control. I followed her guidance. Silence was part of the strategy. The more they acted out of panic, the more mistakes they made. Every misstep was a victory. Every defensive statement a confirmation of our accuracy. By the 5th month, Aegis Tech had secured multiple high-profile contracts. Investors were impressed not only by the product but by the team's professionalism, integrity, and execution. We had built a reputation quietly but decisively, one that Vinatech, despite its resources and previous market position, could not match. And finally, the reckoning reached its symbolic peak. A confidential industry report, based on our documentation, independent audits, and timelines, clearly identified the original creators of Aura. The report didn't sensationalize. It didn't disparage. It simply presented facts, backed by evidence. Vinateka's leadership was forced to acknowledge discrepancies internally, while investors and clients quietly began shifting allegiance. I remember sitting in the office late that evening, reviewing the report. The calm realization struck me: the storm I had engineered was complete. The empire that had betrayed me was not publicly humiliated but quietly dismantled. Piece by piece, through evidence, strategy, and patience. Marcus and Claire were left to navigate the wreckage they had created. Their arrogance, entitlement, and short-sightedness had allowed the truth documented, precise, and undeniable to quietly destroy the illusion they had maintained for years. Meanwhile, Aegis Tech's trajectory was ascending. Each successful contract, each validation from investors, and each independent acknowledgement reinforced our credibility. The quiet, patient, and precise execution of our strategy had created a new reality. We were the rightful creators, the competent innovators, and the measured victors. And in that moment, I realized the profound lesson of this journey: revenge is fleeting, but precision, patience, and integrity create lasting power. I had turned betrayal into opportunity, chaos into structure, and anger into strategy. The reckoning was not just professional. It was personal, ethical, and ultimately transformative. The months of planning, rebuilding, and methodical execution had brought us to the edge of something extraordinary. By now, Aegis Tech and Aura were no longer under the radar. Our discrete demonstrations, documented timelines, and investor endorsements had built a foundation that was impossible to ignore. The storm we had quietly engineered against Vinatech was approaching its culmination. The triumph of precision over arrogance. The first visible sign of our triumph came through market adoption. Contracts that had been tentative now became firm. Investors previously hesitant due to Vinatech's reputation now reached out directly, asking to collaborate and invest. Our client base expanded steadily, with each company acknowledging not just the technical superiority of Aura, but the legitimacy of its creators. I watched these developments unfold with a sense of measured satisfaction. Triumph, I had learned, was not in the celebration of immediate vengeance. It was in watching months of patient work, strategy, and evidence coalesce into undeniable authority. Each new partnership, every positive review, and every investor validation felt like the quiet echo of justice. Inside Vinatech, the collapse had reached its peak. The board, paralyzed by internal doubt and external scrutiny, struggled to maintain stability. Marcus and Claire were reduced to defensive gestures, their credibility shredded not by spectacle, but by evidence and facts. Internal memos revealed panic. Employees whispered anxiously, and contracts were delayed or abandoned. The empire that had once cast me out had no path to recovery. Meanwhile, our team at Aegis Tech worked tirelessly to ensure that our triumph was complete. We didn't rely solely on past victories. Every update to Aura, every improvement, every refinement, was an additional brick in the foundation of our long-term dominance. Marcus Lee and Sofia Ramirez continued their meticulous work, ensuring that every line of code, every algorithm, and every interface maintained the standard that had become our signature. Then came the legal resolution. Nadia had orchestrated the filings with strategic precision. Our documentation, timestamps, and corroborating statements left Vinatech with no viable counterclaims. After a series of confidential negotiations and legal reviews, the company formally acknowledged our authorship of Aura. The settlement included not only financial restitution but also the transfer of intellectual property rights. I remember sitting in Nadia's office when the final confirmation came through. Her expression, usually calm and measured, held a rare smile. "It's done," she said. "Everything is officially in your control. No disputes, no ambiguities." I allowed myself a moment to absorb the reality. Triumph was not just legal. It was strategic, professional, and ethical. We hadn't attacked Vinatech publicly. We hadn't sought spectacle or humiliation. We had relied on evidence, patience, and integrity to dismantle an empire built on deceit. The next weeks were a continuation of controlled growth. We expanded Aegis Tech, hired additional staff, and scaled Aura to new markets. Each success reinforced our credibility and solidified our dominance. Former investors of Vinatech who had doubted us now approached with eagerness. Clients that had once been loyal to the company now preferred working directly with us. I also took the time to reflect on the personal dimension of our journey. Betrayal had initially left a scar, but it had also ignited a determination that fueled every decision. I realized that my triumph was not merely a response to injustice. It was a transformation, a demonstration that integrity, strategic patience, and meticulous planning could overcome even the most entrenched power structures. There were moments of quiet satisfaction as well. Marcus Lee, once wary, now fully trusted the team and shared in the success. Sofia Ramirez's innovations had become integral to Aura's market success. Even Nadia, whose guidance had been critical, expressed pride in the way strategy, evidence, and patience had culminated in victory. Vinatech, in contrast, continued to unravel. Their internal disputes became public in subtle ways, with industry analysts noting leadership instability and declining credibility. Claire, who had once basked in recognition she did not earn, was quietly removed from any position of authority. The collapse was not sensational, but it was irreversible. Evidence, integrity, and meticulous planning had done what anger and drama never could: dismantle arrogance and entitlement completely. I held a quiet meeting with my team one evening, reflecting on the months of work. "We've done more than reclaim what was ours," I said. "We've built something stronger, better, and more resilient. This isn't just victory. It's proof that precision, patience, and integrity always prevail." We celebrated quietly, as our triumph was not about spectacle. It was about substance, legacy, and the knowledge that months of careful strategy had produced results far greater than mere revenge. Our path had been deliberate, disciplined, and ethical, and that made the triumph all the more satisfying. Looking back, I realized the full scope of the journey. Being fired, framed, and erased had initially felt like the end. But it became the beginning, a crucible in which determination, patience, and evidence forged a new reality. We had transformed betrayal into opportunity, chaos into structure, and anger into strategy. Aegis Tech's growth continued, and Aura's market presence became a benchmark in digital security. The company that had once dismissed me now faced an irreversible truth: brilliance cannot be erased, and integrity cannot be defeated. And in that triumph, I discovered the profound lesson of our journey: real power is quiet, patient, and precise. Spectacle fade. Drama dies. But evidence, integrity, and strategy endure. The reckoning was complete. Vinatech was no longer a threat. Our work, our reputation, and our achievements stood undeniable. The triumph was total, silent, methodical, and undeniable. The day I finally allowed myself to step back, look at Aegis Tech headquarters, and breathe, I realized that the journey had been more than a professional battle. It had been a personal transformation, a lesson in patience, strategy, and the quiet power of integrity. I had been fired, framed, and erased, but through methodical planning, unwavering focus, and the support of a loyal team, I had rebuilt not only my career but my confidence, my sense of justice, and my legacy. Sitting in my office, I reflected on the months of careful execution. Every phase of the plan had been deliberate. Every demonstration, every discreet leak, every meticulously documented prototype had contributed to the ultimate triumph. We had never needed drama, public shaming, or sensationalist tactics. We relied on what could not be disputed: evidence, logic, and competence. That was the foundation of true victory. I thought about the people who had helped me along the way. Marcus Lee had been the calm, precise engineer who transformed ideas into reality. Sofia Ramirez had infused Aura with creativity and finesse. Nadia Patel had been our legal mastermind, ensuring that every step we took was protected and defensible. Without their skills, loyalty, and patience, the strategy would have faltered. This triumph wasn't mine alone. It was ours, forged in collaboration and trust. Even Vinatech, which had once seemed like an unshakable empire, had fallen quietly but decisively. Marcus and Claire's arrogance, entitlement, and misjudgment had made them vulnerable. They were confronted not by spectacle, but by truth. Evidence dismantled their authority. Documentation invalidated their claims. Integrity outperformed deceit. It was a lesson I carried deeply. The most powerful revenge is not in noise or destruction, but in precise, unassailable action. Over time, the industry acknowledged Aegis Tech's rise. Our client base expanded globally. Investors trusted us not just for our product, but for the integrity and strategic acumen we demonstrated. Aura became a benchmark for digital security, admired not only for technical brilliance but also for the story behind it. The triumph of rightful creators over a system that had attempted to erase them. I also reflected on my own personal growth. The initial betrayal had left me feeling powerless, angry, and isolated. But that pain became the catalyst for transformation. It taught me to focus not on immediate emotional gratification, but on long-term strategy. It taught me to convert anger into meticulous planning and betrayal into evidence. And it taught me that patience, discipline, and integrity could accomplish what impulsive revenge never could. In the quiet moments, I considered the lessons for anyone who might face betrayal or injustice. First, document everything. Evidence is not just legal protection, it is power. Second, assemble the right team. Individual brilliance can only go so far. Loyalty, competence, and collaboration amplify impact. Third, patience is critical. Immediate reactions may feel satisfying, but precise, calculated actions produce lasting results. Finally, let integrity guide every move. Drama and spectacle may capture attention temporarily, but they do not create enduring authority or credibility. Looking back, I realized the irony of the journey. Those who had sought to erase me had unknowingly forced me to create something greater. Vinatech's betrayal was the crucible in which strategy, resilience, and brilliance had been forged. What they had dismissed as weakness became my greatest strength. And the empire they had built on arrogance and entitlement crumbled quietly under the weight of undeniable truth. As Aegis Tech continued to grow, I made a conscious effort to maintain the culture that had brought us success. Collaboration, meticulous documentation, patience, and integrity became the pillars of our work ethic. Employees were empowered, trusted, and valued. Innovation thrived in an environment of respect, accountability, and shared purpose. The lessons from betrayal were now embedded in the very foundation of the company. I also reflected on personal closure. There was no need for public confrontation or dramatic exposure. Marcus and Claire's acknowledgement of their mistakes, coupled with the legal resolution and market recognition, was enough. True victory lay not in humiliation, but in silent, undeniable success. Their empire was dismantled, but I had no desire to prolong animosity. The lesson was already written in results. Precision, patience, and integrity had won. Late one evening, I walked through the office, watching teams collaborate on new features and improvements. For Aura, the hum of productivity, the quiet focus of engineers and designers, and the sense of purpose filled the space with energy. I realized then that the real legacy of this journey was not revenge, it was creation. We had taken what was stolen and transformed it into something far greater, something enduring, and something beyond the reach of petty ambition or deceit. I also thought about the impact on the broader industry. Aegis Tech's story became a quiet legend, a case study in integrity, strategy, and resilience. Professionals discussed the importance of meticulous documentation, patient execution, and strategic planning. The industry began to value evidence-backed innovation over flashy claims and politics. Our triumph had created a ripple effect, influencing behavior, ethics, and standards. As I looked back on the journey from the day I was fired, framed, and dismissed to this moment of quiet triumph, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Not because I had defeated anyone in a conventional sense, but because I had demonstrated the power of precision, patience, and integrity. Betrayal had been transformed into strategy, anger into creation, and loss into enduring achievement. I wrote in my journal that night, capturing the essence of the journey. Revenge is fleeting. Drama fades. Spectacle dies. But truth, evidence, and integrity endure. Betrayal may strike, but careful, patient, and precise action turns adversity into triumph. And the quiet victories, executed with strategy and integrity, leave legacies that no arrogance or deceit can erase. That reflection became my guiding principle. Every decision at Aegis Tech, Every interaction with investors, employees, and clients, and every new feature we developed was shaped by these lessons. Integrity, patience, and strategy were no longer just tools, they were the core of our legacy. In the months and years that followed, Aegis Tech continued to expand, innovate, and lead. Aura became a symbol of what could be achieved through meticulous planning, evidence-backed strategy, and ethical leadership. Vinatech faded quietly into the background, a cautionary tale of arrogance, entitlement, and failure to respect innovation. And I, once betrayed and erased, had reclaimed not just my work, but my identity, authority, and legacy. The triumph was complete, silent, precise, and undeniable. That's how Elena turned betrayal into triumph. She was fired, framed, and erased, but through patience, strategy, and undeniable proof, she built her empire and exposed the truth. If you loved this story, hit like, subscribe to Family Feud Files, and turn on notifications for more jaw-dropping stories of betrayal, revenge, and justice. Remember, sometimes the quietest actions are the most powerful.